You just got the Canon R5 Mark II and you have a vision. You want to shoot videos that look truly cinematic. But then you dive into the menus and you see a wall of options like C-Log2, HEVC, RAW, 422, and it can be overwhelming. In this video, I'm going to translate all of that for you. We'll go through a simple step-by-step setup to get the absolute best video quality that this camera can produce. We'll start with the one thing most people overlook, and I'll even share a secret setting for RF lenses that gives you buttery smooth exposure control. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'll show you the easiest way to expose your C-Log2 footage. Hi, I'm Bruno Pozo. I'm a commercial filmmaker in Bend, Oregon, and I make weekly videos on filmmaking technique, gear reviews, and how to make money with your camera. If that's interests you, hit that like and subscribe. Now, let's dive into the guide. Before we touch a single setting, we need to talk about memory cards. Because without the right cards, the camera will literally block you from selecting its highest quality video modes. The Canon R5 Mark II has two different slots, a CF Express Type B slot and a standard UHS 2 SD card slot. For your recordings, you'll want to prioritize a high quality CF Express Type B card. If you plan on shooting in the most demanding formats like 8K RAW, Canon recommends a card rated at VPG 400. But for most of us shooting in 4K, any reputable CF Express card with a sustained write speed of 240 megabytes a second will do the trick. I personally use a 1TB Lexar Pro card, and it handles pretty much everything perfectly. Now for the SD card slot, you could buy a top-of-the-line V90 card, but I have a better recommendation that will save you money and speed up your editing later. For now, a more affordable V60 card is all you need if you're going to shoot up to 4K 60 or even 4K 120. And I'll show you why in the next step. Okay, let's tell the camera how to use those cards. This is more important than you think as it determines which recording options are available to you. Head to the wrench menu and select Record Function. You'll see a few options, but let's focus on the two most useful ones. Number 1, Standard. This is the default setting. The camera records to whichever card you designate as primary. It's usually going to be the CF Express Type B card. To unlock every single frame rate and resolution, this is the mode you need to be using. And number 2, Proxy Recording. This is my personal favorite and the reason you don't need that expensive SD card. In this mode, the camera records the main high-quality video to your CF Express Type B card, while simultaneously recording a small, low-quality proxy file to the SD card. These small files are so easy to work with and edit and makes your computer run incredibly smooth, especially if you're shooting RAW footage. The only catch here, you can't record 8K or 4K 120 frames per second video in this mode. For this guide, I'm going to set it to standard so we can see everything the camera has to offer. Now, onto the fun part. Let's jump into the red camera menu and head to the first page. The first thing we need to choose here is our main record format. This list can look like gibberish, but let me make it simple for you. First off, we have RAW. This is the absolute best quality, capturing the pure data from your sensor. The trade-off: 1, the files are enormous, 2, the camera's more likely to overheat, and 3, you're gonna have to color grade your footage to make it pop. And then we have AVC and HEVC. These are your best friends for most projects. AVC creates files that are larger but easier for most computers to edit. HEVC creates smaller files, which is great for saving space, but it means that your computer's gonna have to be doing more processing to actually edit those files. And then you have the numbers at the very end, 422 at 10-bit or 420 at 8-bit. This is a very simple rule. For the best possible quality, you always want to choose the format that has 422 and 10-bit in it. 10-bit color gives you over 1 billion colors compared to 16 million colors in 8-bit, which also helps prevent those ugly color banding in skies and gradients. 422 simply means the camera is capturing more color information, which is always better. My recommendation here is if you want the best balance for quality and ease of editing, then choose AVC 422 at 10-bit. It's what we'll use for the rest of this tutorial. But personally, I like using the HEVC 422 10-bit option because with my MacBook Pro with the M1 chip, it's able to actually edit those HEVC files very nicely. And the fact that I'm getting about a third of the file size smaller means I can save a lot more space and capture more content. Now let's head to movie record size. This is where we set our resolution and our frame rate. First, you'll notice next to some of the resolutions, you have this text that reads fine. In fine mode, the camera actually is using its full 8K resolution sensor and then scaling that down into either 4K, 2K, or even 1080p. This makes your video significantly sharper and more detailed, so I highly recommend using that mode when possible. For frame rates, if you want that classic cinematic motion, choose 23.98 or also 24 frames per second. 30 FPS is great for social media, and 60 FPS is perfect for slow motion or action and sports. Now, a quick note on slow motion. To shoot in 4K 120, you actually have to be in the unfine mode. This is unfortunately a strange trade-off with the Canon R5 Mark II, but for the best image quality possible, I highly recommend 4Ku fine at 24 frames per second. Finally, you'll see compression options. Here we have intra and LGOP. The simple version is this. Intra files are higher quality and easier to edit, but are about 3 times larger than LGOP. LGOP files are 3 times smaller, but they require more processing power to edit, so they can be hard on your computer. Before we get to our image, here's a quick setting most people don't know about. On page 3 of the red menu, you'll see AV 1/8 stop increment. If you're using a native RF lens, you'll want to turn this on. This allows you to change your aperture in tiny 1/8 stop increments instead of the standard clunky third stops. This means you can make incredibly smooth and subtle exposure adjustments even while recording, which looks far more professional. Okay, this is the most important setting for your image. On page 4, we're going to enable custom picture. And then we're going to go down and select Canon Log 2, also known as C-Log 2. This is the picture profile that gives you the absolute most dynamic range, meaning you capture the most detail in the shadows and then the highlights that this camera offers. Now, when you select this, your image on the screen will look flat, gray, and washed out. Don't panic, this is absolutely normal. It means you've captured all that color and light information successfully. You're going to bring those colors and contrasts back in post-production. But how are you supposed to film with a screen that looks like that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about how to expose our C-Log 2 image. To do this, we're going to use the camera's built-in exposure tools. Waveforms are great, but I find false color and zebras to be faster and a lot more intuitive. But first, let's stop looking at this gray image. Go to page 8 of the red menu and you can see View Assist, and we're going to turn this on. This applies a temporary color grade to your screen so you can actually judge your shot, but it won't actually be burned into your final footage. Unfortunately though, this disables the ability to actually use false color. So we'll cover how to expose the image using zebras. Back on the red menu on page 8, we're going to go to zebra settings. Here, we're going to turn them on, and we're going to set zebra 1 level to 55 plus or minus 5%. This is your skin tone exposure guide for light skin. And then we'll set zebra 2 to 85%. This will show what parts of your image are completely blown out and overexposed. So here's how you'll use this when filming a person. We're going to select zebra 1, and we're going to adjust the exposure until we start to see zebra stripes appear lightly on their skin, specifically the bright part where the light is shining. And once you see those zebra patterns, then you know you have perfect skin tone exposure. When shooting B-roll or landscapes, I'll select zebra 2. And here, I just want to make sure the only places you see zebra stripes are on things that are supposed to be blown out, like a bright light source, a light bulb, or even the sun itself. Anything else, I'll want to make sure there's no zebra patterns appearing on them. By using these 2 zebra settings, you take all the guesswork out of finding proper exposure. Finally, how do you adjust that exposure though? A quick refresher for anyone who might not be familiar, your shutter speed is typically going to be locked for natural motion blur, and that's just going to be 1 over your frame rate times 2. And so when we're shooting at 24 frames per second, our shutter speed should be 1 over 48. On this camera, that's going to be 1 over 50. And then if we're shooting in 60 frames per second, our shutter speed will be 1 over 60 times 2, which is 120. And then you want to set your aperture for the amount of depth of field you want. So if you want deep depth of field where you want everything in front of your frame to be mostly in focus, you'll be at f8, f11, f16. But if you want to separate your subject from the background or create that blurry background effect with all that beautiful bokeh, then you'll be living around f2.8 and below. And finally, our ISO is going to be set at 800 because that is the base ISO for C-Log2, and that's where we get the most dynamic range. But you'll find that when you have these settings locked, you either have an overly bright image or one that's a little too dark. So what do we do in that situation? Well, it's going to depend. Let's start with an overly exposed image. In the case that you've set your shutter speed properly, you got your aperture to where you want it, and you're at base 800, and the image is just wide and overblown, then you'll want to use an ND filter. This one is specifically a variable ND filter because I can actually adjust the strength of the ND from very little to very high. And this just basically is reducing the amount of light that's coming onto your sensor. Typically, you're going to be using an ND filter in really bright conditions like in the outdoors. But what about when you set all your settings and the image is too dark? And then you really have only two options here. 1, introduce more light, or 2, increase the ISO. On the Canon R5 Mark II, it actually has a sort of fake second base ISO at 4000. So you can try setting the ISO to 4000 and see if you get the proper exposure. If not, it's totally okay to continue to raise the ISO to make sure you're actually getting the shot in the proper exposure. The way I see it, it's better to have captured the moment even if it's noisy than to have missed it trying to get a perfectly clean image. And actually there is a third way to sort of increase the exposure in this setting, is that if you can get to a larger f-stop like f1.4, then you'll be able to let in more light to actually increase the exposure. But if you are at the largest aperture opening that your camera or lens can provide, then you would use the ISO setting that I recommended. And with that, you are ready to shoot some incredible cinematic video on your Canon R5 Mark II. I know I went through all these settings really quickly, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you enjoyed this video, you might like my cinematic video guide on the Canon R6 Mark II. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. I appreciate every single one of you who do, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.